the big issues that are going to be their priorities. And so this year, things like education and starting a new IT department at the state level, and just a lot of the issues you've been reading about tax reform, or not tax reform, but tax breaks, they passed that bill recently on that. So with all of the other issues of controversy, this government-owned property lands issue was not a big enough priority for the leadership to want to take that on and make those arguments. And so that bill has been put aside, that bigger bill, and this was a representative, that bill has been put aside. It's not going to be heard this year, so we'll bring it back next year. Also wanted to mention the same thing happened to, some of you know Keith Perry, Representative Keith Perry from just down the road. He had two fantastic bills. One was on protecting property owners against government exactions. That's where the government says, we'll give you a permit to use your property, but you got to put half of it in conservation or something like that. All right, he had a bill that would stop that. That got caught up in the same process. It wasn't a priority this year, and they didn't want to bring it up because it will be controversial when it comes up. The other bill that he had, was to require local governments to put into their local comprehensive plan some sentences that guarantee that before decisions are made, a person's private property rights have to be taken into consideration. Right now, they don't have to do that because it's not always at the local level. It's at the state level, but we want to push it down to the local level. So he has taken on two really what I think they'll be controversial issues, but they are perfect for us to support. So I want to keep you all informed of him. I would just say I've had a chance to work with him and get to know him. He is the kind of citizen legislator I think our founding fathers had in mind when they wanted to set up a House of Representatives and a Senate. He is one of those princes. He's got his own business, he's got a great family, and he is doing a great job up there. And I think next year we're going to see some of those bills move on his behalf as well. Let me tell you about one other bill that is of concern because I'm dealing with it in Orlando. Has anyone here ever heard of a thing called a neighborhood improvement district? Oh. In Orlando, here's the situation. You'll get the idea of what it is. A district was drawn by the city in the southern part of downtown Orlando. The place where I office out of happens to be in that district. It's mostly an industrial area and kind of a pass-through street going north and south with the businesses on the street. And it's about a 10-block area. So the district was drawn, and it was decided that by the city that a referendum would be held in the district to see do they want to have a neighborhood improvement district to make improvements. Yeah. Roads and street lights and what have you. Now the only deal is this. The Florida legislature says that if the voters agree on this, they can charge every property owner $2 mills extra every year. And if they need to, they can also do an extra $500 assessment on every parcel that is owned. You can say, we want those improvements, we're willing to pay the price, or we don't want those, and we're not. Here's the tricky part. Residents of the district do not get to vote. Only the property owners get to vote. Now, in a business community, most of the property owners sometimes work for corporations, they live out of state. So only the property owners get to vote. So you may live in the district, but if you don't own land, you don't get to vote, even though your rent or your lease may be going up if it's a commercial entity. Here's the other tricky thing about it. It's not one of these American one person, one vote votes. In this case, the more assessed value that your property has in the district, the more your vote counts. So in our neighborhood district, here's the interesting part. In our neighborhood district, there's a hospital called Orlando Health. It, in fact, possesses more than 50% of the assessed value of the district. So, in fact, they could cast one vote and nullify everybody else, even if 100% of the opposition voted against it. Now, Orlando Health has said they're only going to actually claim 22% of their assessed value. So what that means is, if I'm a property owner and I get one vote because I just have a small parcel, Orlando Health gets 22 votes. So you can see the rich really do get to drive the whole thing, because their vote is going to be really hard. When you have one vote that's 22%, you really have to get a lot of people to come up and vote against that. So that's what we're dealing with. Now, the improvements have to be made with the taxes raised. But right now, there's a bill in the Florida legislature, and it is what they call committee substitute for House Bill 351. Brian Nelson, who's a good friend of mine, actually happens to be sponsoring this bill, erroneously in my opinion. In the Senate, a man by the name of Jeremy Ring is sponsoring the bill, and the number over in the Senate is 510. Here's why this bill is dangerous. If this bill passes, it will give a neighborhood district the authority to take the taxes raised and bond out the money or borrow money against you. And the bill says that the district will be responsible for it. So I went in, and I don't know. Here's the way it works. In Orlando, the city council is the board of the neighborhood district, but they appoint people to represent the property owners and make all the decisions regarding the district. All the ideas and all the improvements that are being proposed, it runs through this quote-unquote advisory board. They do usually, what I've seen, everything the city tells them to do. But it says the district is responsible. I said, what happens if they default on these bonds? The district is responsible. So I said, is that the city? Well, yes. Is it the advisory board? Probably no. And I said, well, what happens if the city can't do anything about it? Who does it go back to? If the city needs to come up with money, well, they'll have to go to the property owners. So what it means is, if this bill passes, the property owners in this thing called the Neighborhood Improvement District can be responsible for all of that bonded money. So they could take $5 million in taxes gathered, and they could bond it and end up with $50 million to play with. And the local taxpayers would, the local owners, I should say, would all be responsible for that money. So that's the kind of, I would say, I'm going to call it deceptive. In my mind, it really is. So if you hear about this bill, I don't think they've passed enough committees to go through all their committees. But again, both of these houses, if the committee has been heard at least in one committee and passed, they can withdraw it from these other committees and try to pass it on the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House. So it's just, again, it feels like we're prevailing in some of these things, but we won't know until they do this thing called sign and die, which is when they end session, I think, on May 2nd. So I hope you'll stay vigilant with us on that. If you are not getting our email and you would like to get the alerts on this, probably rather than have you give me your email, my email, the easiest way to email is me at info@proprights.com. Info@proprights, one word, PROPRIGHST.com. Let me make sure I don't mess that up like that.
That sounds like the Agenda 21 for.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Essentially, that's what
This is exactly this. The improvements are, they didn't change some of the words. It's walkable communities, it's narrowing roadways so that to accommodate broader bike paths. It's calling for greenways to be put through all this. And it's all couched. It really sounds good when you read it. But when you find out where it's coming from and what the potential cost is, someone's going to make a fortune on this. Because if you can bond that kind of money. So this bill is really dangerous. And you can look those up on the either flsenate.gov site or the My Florida House website and find those things. Yes, sir.
Dan, when you lobby for property rights, do you find that you're opposed by the private sector or government lobbies?
I would say in almost 100% of the situations, the things like the Florida League of Cities and the Florida Association of Counties would always be against what we would be for, or at least they would be neutral at best. We would work very closely with organizations such as the Florida Chamber of Commerce and Associated Industries and Home Builders Association, and all of the things I did in working to rewrite this bill, the springs protection, that was all done in conjunction with them, because we see pretty much eye to eye on those issues. So we try to work with them because we have, common heart, common direction. Yes, sir.
This Springs Protection Act, that's basically a part of Agenda 21. We just ran into it. And under Agenda 21, it's called the Green Way. The Blue Way. And what happens is the area that drains to particular rivers is considered a blue way. And what they've done, at least we had a situation where in Wisconsin, the people were trying to sell their home because they had a septic tank, they couldn't because they had to put in a new special septic tank, which must be pumped at least twice a year, and it cannot leak, or then they have fines and so forth. But from that step, it's to eliminate living on that property at all. That is all part of Agenda 21.
Well, it is in the Blue Way system. You can Google this, and it's an interesting study. I did a newsletter on this. It takes not just a river from its mouth to wherever it goes, its origin, but it takes the whole watershed. And what we're talking about, the whole spring shed and this stuff to protect it. And some of these springs have been impaired. I don't want to deny it. They need repair. There's some things that need to be done, but you just need to take a look and do an inventory of potential causes, and then start fixing the worst ones first and work back from that. But this Blue Ways is a way to put, and again, they collect unelected stakeholders is the way they put it, and they put them in charge, and they're giving government money, and they get to develop policy for whatever goes on in that spring shed. There's another one that if you want to go to www.doi.gov/LCC. That stands for Landscape Conservation Cooperatives. It's the same thing as Blue Ways, but it takes a huge landscape, like maybe a quarter of the southern portion of the southwest United States, because it's an arid desert kind of a place. And they do the same thing, appoint stakeholders in this. They've already divided the United States up into 22 landscapes. And you can go on that website and see the maps on that. So there's all these little strategies to seize the rights of private owners, put unelected people in charge of, earning a salary or doing whatever they're told to do. And meanwhile, our property rights continue to be eroded. So again, thank you for all that you're doing, and we really appreciate the contributions and the letters of support. I know some of you in this room sent emails to your senators against the bill, and I think that that stuff slowly adds up to people. So thank you for keeping this in front of them. They can't do this in a corner. We've spoken publicly on it. I probably will not get Senator Simmons' Christmas card this year, but not trying to be mean about it. He is a brilliant guy, but why he has taken this turn and embraced this whole sustainable development extreme position is really beyond me. And it's got a lot of people. It's like a tidal wave that's rolling. Everyone feels this urge to do something, but again, there's no science behind it, and it's really a big government bill with road rights. One more question, then I have to get
I
off.
was just saying, it's money.
I'm sorry.
One of my favorites, you guys, all about money.
Okay, all right. Like, this is a question. Which one? On the Springs? The Springs bill in the Senate is 1576, and in the House it's 1313. And then the neighborhood improvement district in the Senate is 510, and in the House it's 351.
Can you say who's spending the money to pass these?
Let me put it this way, as I have spoken on the Springs bill, every environmentalist group has been in those meetings and has always said what a wonderful thing this bill is. So all the environmental groups are very, very big behind this bill. I don't know who's spending the money and who is actually there. I keep asking the question, why would good people do this? And I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. That's part of the crystal ball you try to read every week when you go over.
Well, I heard one time on that spring bill that it was some group of septic tank inspectors. Is that true?
Well, it could, the question was, is it inspectors behind it? You know, I don't know. Here's what I know. There are 2.7 million homes with septic systems in Florida. If I could just do something that would make every one of them pay me $10,
Yeah.
you know, we could all retire on that
Well,
money.
you can bet that a septic tank inspection costs more than $10.
Well, I know that. I'm just trying to say, I'm picking a low number just to show the absurdity. I mean, all of a sudden, we turn 2.7 into 27 million. That's huge. Yeah, you're right. So I don't know where the money comes from. I mean, I know the groups that report. I know of the private industry is all against it. Although they have to be careful in the way that they present things because they have to represent other groups as well out there. So they can't come on too strong lest somebody get angry at them and then they say, well, I'm not going to hear your bill over here because you talk so poorly about our bill over here. So it's a game that has to be played. It's a dance, and it's been a wild ride, and hopefully it'll be over, but we're not there yet. So just stay vigilant with us on this, and I'll try to get information as soon as I get it, okay? Thanks again for letting me be here. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dan. We'll have just a quick announcement or two, and then we'll go on with our next speaker.
One of the things that we want to do is to thank the vendors that are here. And we've got a table set up for the John Burke Society, Liberty First Network, the North Central Florida Tea Party. There's a table in the back that has literature for anyone that has things out there. Dr. Youngblood and the Faith-Based Outreach, Citizens for Self-Governance, History Alive Productions with Rodney Benjamin Franklin, and who did I miss? Concourse Coalition. Okay, and are you ready? Okay.
Sorry, we started out with a lot of time on our hands for this conference, thinking we were going to do lots of questions, give you guys a lot of time. And speakers kept coming to us saying, we'd like to speak, we'd like to speak. We've turned away speakers for this. We literally have done another complete day of speakers who wanted to talk to you guys about what they were doing, either legislatively or for the upcoming election. So forgive us when it gets a little cramped. We really did have it planned out where you were going to have lots of time for questions, so I'm sorry about that. But our next speaker is going to be speaking on the National Elections and Political Action Committee. Karen Jarosh, which you saw earlier, will be speaking on political action committees. And Lori Newsom, president of the Gainesville Tea Party, will be speaking on national elections. She's a politically active conservative for many years and has always subscribed to the values of Tea Party. She's a business owner in the medical industry and is acutely affected by the overreach of government at all levels. It is her goal to motivate citizens to not only get to the polls and vote for their legislators, to also generate support for those candidates across the country who are challenging the incumbent Republicans responsible for the fiscal crisis facing our nation. In the interest of unifying grassroots groups across the country, Lori has implemented election actions. This is a strategy to combine efforts of conservative activists to achieve victory at the polls in November of 2014. Let's give Lori a nice welcome.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a long day, a lot of good information. I am not an accomplished speaker. You'll have to bear with me. But what I am is impassioned. I'm sure all of you are aware that these November elections are crucially important if we are to have any sort of change in Washington. You know, a very good friend of ours, Tom Hayes Morrison, always says we no longer have two political parties. We only have one, the big government party, and it's in Washington, and the other political party is the rest of us. So, that being said, the rest of us now really need to get involved and take action. We all know the issues. We all know what needs to be done. Now we have to do it. I know that historically, Tea parties have not endorsed candidates I am here to tell you that it's time. It's time to endorse candidates. It's time to get behind candidates and get them in the seats. If we do not get candidates in the seats, we are as irrelevant as the angry mob screaming at the gates. We did that in '09. We were very clear about our sentiments about Obamacare, and we were ignored. So, I do have a question for you before I get started on what I feel is a very important part of the election process. Who wants to get rid of Mitch McConnell? Well, there's a way. There's a way to do this. And we came across this protocol, methodology, however you want to describe it, after the presidential 2012 election. The day after the election, many, many people emailed us and said, that's it, I'm done with the Republican Party. I'm done. I am dropping out, I'm going to become an independent, and I am no longer interested in a Republican candidate. I'm here to tell you that after those reactions, we went to great lengths to see exactly what options do we have as effective citizens in our political landscape, and I can tell you it has not going to be with the Conservative Party, it's not going to be with the Libertarians, it's not going to be with the Democrats. It has to be with the Republicans. The people that have dropped out of the Republican Party and have become independents, in my mind, have dropped out a lot. Who is 100% in Heritage Action and FreedomWorks.org score? Rand Paul. Who else? Ted Cruz. Who else? Mike Lee. They're all Republicans. Not one of them is a libertarian. We're not going to get there unless we elect Republicans that reflect our values. And I'm here to tell you that they exist. And that is what I just wanted to go over with you this afternoon. It is said we need to take over 6 Senate seats to regain control of the Senate. We would like to have more. What I'm going to talk to you this afternoon is about specific primaries where we have an incumbent Republican that has to go, and we have a Tea Party challenger. I'm very happy that in these major races, and congressional races as well, although we won't go over those this afternoon, there is a challenger. We can make a difference, okay? First, let's look at this map. You see the yellow states. That's where we have incumbents, or we have a retiring incumbent with a 3-way primary for that seat. Okay, let's talk about Nebraska. You have 4 Republicans in the primary, the incumbent's retiring. We have Ben Sass, who has been thoroughly vetted. And oh, by the way, these challengers,